Is wild swimming legal? Where can you find open water swimming in the UK? Now, things are different in Scotland since the Land Reform Act 2003, which gives people in Scotland the right to roam, the right to explore land and water for recreational purposes, which includes wild swimming. Things are a lot clearer in Scotland. Certainly the law is more defined, more clear, that wild swimming in most instances, in most rivers, most lakes, is going to be fine. However, in England and Wales, things are a lot more complicated. There are a few different parties that are gonna maybe make things difficult for wild swimming. So firstly, you have the landowner. If it's land approaching a lake or land approaching a river, the landowner is going to be the person that owns that land going towards, say, the riverside, the riverbank. Now, they're also going to own the land underneath the water. So the riverbed is going to be also owned by the same landowner in most instances that owns the land going up to the river. And if it's two different landowners each side of the river, they're going to own up to the middle of their side of that riverbed. So firstly, you have the landowner issue. Now, the Crown, the Queen, technically owns the water that flows through the river, and you may also have a, say, angling society or a fishing association which may own the rights to the fish stocked within the river. So you can see how this is quickly becoming quite complicated, because you have a few different parties which may or may not be pro wild swimming. So you'll often run into signs. There's two reasons why you may see no swimming signs. One is a liability issue. One of my favourite swimming spots close to me in Olney, there is a sign saying swimming is not recommended. This isn't to say you can't swim there. It's not to say you shouldn't swim there. It's more of a liability issue. If you drown, or even if you find yourself injured, those signs are basically there, so there's no legal recourse. You cannot sue whoever has the land up to the riverbank in that case. Another issue, there may be signs where the private landowner owns the land and they do not want you on their property. In that case, if it's a private land issue, then in my opinion you should really avoid that. If the private landowner doesn't want you on their land, then in that case you shouldn't really be there. Things are quite interesting in rivers, specifically in England and Wales, not least from a legal point of view. Just from a swimming point of view, rivers are actually my favourite place to swim besides the sea, but certainly inland I prefer rivers to lakes. Now, rivers are interesting. There is the public right of navigation. So rivers which are navigable by boat, you can also swim in. So areas where people kayak, people use boats, you can also swim in these bodies of water. Now, finding rivers with public rights of navigation, all tidal rivers have public rights of navigation. So if you are near a river which is tidal, i.e. is affected by tidal flow, you can find this on a Ordnance Survey map. This is marked both on the 1 to 25 and 1 to 50,000 maps. Ordnance Survey is going to be one of your best tools in your armoury for finding place to wild swim. So a tidal river, you have public right of navigation. You can swim in a tidal river. Now, there's the National Association of Boat Owners has a PDF with rivers with public rights of navigation on. That's this document here. So this is the NABO, National Association of Boat Owners. Further down the page, they have a list of various rivers through historical reasons and other factors have the public right of navigation. Now, these are spread across the country, so I'll leave a link to this document. You can see if there are any of these rivers near you. So all these rivers listed here, some of them are only between certain sections, some of them it's the complete river, but these rivers have public right of navigation. They are spread out across the country. Now, this isn't every river in the UK. This probably only represents something like 4 or 5% of the total rivers in the UK. But any of these rivers listed in this document, you can swim in. You can also use boats on. They have public right of navigation. Now, you're going to certainly have issues in some instances of getting to the riverbank, because if it's private land up to the river itself, then that is going to be trespass trying to access the river. Now, I would always try my best to avoid trespass wherever you can. Using maps, especially using the internet now, there's less and less reasons why you should find yourself in a trespass situation. However, in England and Wales, trespass is a civil offence. It's not a criminal offence in most instances. There are a few reasons why trespass can become a criminal offence if there's more. I think it's more than 6 vehicles on the land. I would never really bring my vehicle onto someone's land, always park somewhere and then, park in a car park and then walk to it. If you're armed, you're generally not going to be armed when you wild swim. Then it may become a criminal offence. But for most instances, it's a civil offence. So avoid trespassing as much as you can. Really try not to do it at all. But in the instance where you find yourself unaware that you have trespassed, it is a civil offence. It's not a criminal offence. So avoid it where you can, but it's certainly not going to be the end of the world. You certainly are very unlikely to be arrested if you do inadvertently find yourself trespassing. Now, going on from the public right of navigation, there is an interesting rabbit hole you can go down. This is to do with ancient laws. This is a dissertation written by a gentleman called Reverend Douglas Caffin. This is the right of navigation on non-tidal rivers and common law. He argues in this dissertation, it is argued that the original public right has not been lost, but there always has been and there continues to be a public right of navigation on all non-tidal rivers which are naturally physically navigable by small boats, and on those rivers that have been made physically navigable at public expense. So the Reverend Douglas Caffin does argue under Magna Carta, under ancient English law, that pretty much all rivers that you can get a boat down, you could in theory wild swim on. This is somewhat of a rabbit hole. This hasn't really been codified. This isn't set in law. This is just an argument through Magna Carta, through ancient law, through various means. I mean, we'll see if this does come to anything, but I thought this is an interesting one. I'll leave a link to this one in the description as well, because if you have the time, it's probably certainly an interesting document to read. So that's rivers covered, tidal rivers and rivers with public rights of navigation. They're going to be your friends. They're going to be good rivers to initially look at finding for wild swimming, because those are going to be places where you should be able to wild swim without the fear of people telling you to move on, which is just going to spoil your day, and it's not something you really want to happen. Lakes are a little bit more complicated, because a lake, of course, is an enclosed body of water. It's going to be generally one landowner that encompasses the lake. It may be two or maybe several in certain scenarios. But if it's private land, there's not really much you can do. You're probably not going to be allowed to swim there unless the private landowner explicitly gives you the right to do that. If it's public land, then it's going to be somewhat more interesting. You may be able to contact the council or who owns the public land. If it's a national park, if it's national trust, you may be able to contact them, see if they do have any provisions for wild swimming. If you did swim in public land, i.e. land owned by the government, owned by the local council, it's highly improbable that they would go after you for any kind of civil trespass. It's just almost improbable that the council would want to do that. They may potentially have some kind of local bylaw in place saying you can't swim, but it's highly improbable that the local council are really going to put the time or resources into chasing people that swim in their water. It's public land, it's not private land. The way I see it, I would always try and minimize any disruption to private landowners. That's their private land, they should do as they wish with it. If it's public land, the council really, from a liability point of view, maybe they don't want you swimming there, but from a legal point of view, it's highly improbable that your local council would ever push for any kind of civil trespass law against anybody that decided to swim in their lake, essentially. But again, you can contact your local council, contact your national park if you're near one, contact the National Trust. Some of these agencies are becoming much more supportive of wild swimming, so that could be a good avenue to go down if you necessarily don't have a lake or any other alternative near you. So as a summary, tidal rivers, these are going to be a great place to start. Use your OS map. Any tidal rivers near you, you're going to have public access to those. Other rivers with public rights of navigation, I'll leave the link to the National Boat Owners Association. You look at those rivers near you. Public spaces, contact your council, contact national parks. They may have provisions. It's highly improbable that a council will push for any kind of trespass laws against you. I would definitely recommend really respecting the rights of private landowners. Certainly would never actively try and trespass on someone's private land where they don't want private swimmers there. Some private landowners are supportive. You may find these private landowners, there certainly are in areas that I've passed through, there are certainly some private landowners that are supportive of people using their private land, but by and large most private landowners probably don't really want you going there, especially if they've put signs up. Another important one is if you do find rivers with that you are allowed to swim on. Just bearing in mind that if there's a footpath or there's public access going to it, stick to those. Don't cross land which you don't have the right to do so. Just be respectful. I think it just helps everybody. The more kind of good we're putting out there, the better things are going to be for everybody that wants to wild swim. Everybody wants to have access to the waters. And if you do find yourself in a situation where you have inadvertently trespassed on private land, just be apologetic, move on. If that is the genuine landowner, just move on. It's their land. There's plenty of other places to wild swim. So hopefully you find this video interesting. Let me know where you are wild swimming. Actually, in the a river with public access that's quite near me, I have the River Great Ouse. This is a fabulous river I find for swimming in. It's documented on the list of rivers with public right of navigation. So check through the list of rivers. You may find somewhere on there. It's quite surprising which rivers are on there. They're scattered around the country, so hopefully you can find one on there. But there's plenty of places out there. Use your imagination. Get your OS map out. You will find places. Initially it can seem a bit daunting. Inquire with local clubs, search on the internet. There's a whole world of resources out there. I hope you find this video interesting. Let me know your thoughts and comments on this one. Where do you like wild swimming? Lakes, rivers, sea? Where's best for you? There's so many options out there, and I will see you in a future video.